In the Wild West winters, some mistakes were buried in snow and silence until the daughter a frightened father abandoned returned from Apache country, carrying a cedar box and a choice no one could escape. I set one condition at sundown and kept it. Ask as a question, never as an order. That was what Reverend Samuels told me when winter sat heavy on the roofs of Bitter Willow, and I was still young enough to think most rules were for other people. Beside his words on that cold evening rested a small cedar box shaped like a keepsake chest, its simple iron latch catching the lanternlight. I didn't know then that the latch would stay in my memory longer than most faces. Back then, I swept the mission floors each dusk, dragging a stiff broom across rough boards while the wind worried the shutters. The Reverend kept neat crates of dried beans stacked in the corner, and the girl, Mary, too small for the name they'd given her, slept in a cot by the stove. Her breath fogged when the draft slid under the door and the cot ropes creaked like old leather. Winter work tends to shrink a place around you, every motion a small fight against cold. Her father arrived just before the last light. I heard the crunch of boots first, then the scrape of a saddle shifting. He pushed inside with only a nod, the kind men give when they fear their voice might break. He set down the cedar box on the table, its latch clicking softly. "She needs a place," he said. That was all. No story, no promise. His hands trembled as he rested them on the wood. Reverend Samuels touched the box gently. "She'll be safe tonight." "Safe," the man echoed, but the word held no warmth. I busied myself with the broom again, the sensible refuge of chores. I felt Mary's eyes on me, curious, unblinking, and remembered the rule. Ask as a question. So I knelt beside her cot. "Would you like to sit nearer the stove?" I asked. She didn't speak, only gathered her small blanket and followed me. Her quiet weighed heavier than the broom handle. Her father didn't look back when he left, though the wind tried to push the door against him like a hand urging him to reconsider. A lantern outside flickered, making his shadow jump along the wall before winter swallowed him whole. The Reverend watched the door long after it closed, the cedar box still under his palm. Later that night, while I washed 10 bowls in lukewarm water, he pried open the box. Inside were a small wool dress, neatly folded, a hair ribbon, and a note with 3 words, "She won't last." The Reverend shut the lid as if the cold might seep out from those words alone. "Fear leads folks to strange choices," he murmured. "Stranger still when they believe it's mercy." Morning came brittle and sharp. I woke to hoofbeats too soft for cavalry, and too many for a single rancher. Apache riders. 4 of them moved through the low fog, horses stepping with the quiet certainty of creatures that know the land like blood. They approached without haste, stopping before the mission's doorway. Their leader, a woman maybe 10 years older than me, wore a coat sewn from dark hide and edged with careful beadwork. Simple, dignified, made for use, not display. Snow gathered on her shoulders like ash. Reverend Samuel stepped outside first, hands open. "Morning to you." She looked past him to the cedar box I'd placed just inside the threshold. Her eyes were patient, measuring, not hostile. One of the younger riders pointed toward it, then toward the tracks from the night before. Mary stood behind my leg, clutching the hem of my coat. Winter air stung my throat as I bent to her. "You can stay by the stove," I whispered, but she shook her head, watching the riders with an expression I couldn't place. Fear, yes, but something else beneath it. Recognition of a kind I didn't understand. The leader dismounted slowly, each motion respectful, deliberate. She touched 2 fingers to her chest, then extended them toward Mary. A greeting or a question. Her voice, when it came, was low. "May I approach?" Reverend Samuels nodded. I realized I'd held my breath. She knelt so her eyes were level with Mary's. "Cold," she said simply, tapping her own coat. Then Mary's thin blanket. She didn't reach for her, didn't presume. She waited. We can start slow, I murmured to Mary, not sure who I was reassuring. Mary released my coat. She stepped forward, one small pace, then another, stopping close enough for the woman to rest a gentle hand on her shoulder. But only once, Mary leaned into the touch. Consent. Understood without words. The wind hushed for a moment, as if the prairie itself listened. The riders conferred softly. The leader rose, speaking to the Reverend with quiet clarity. Tracks show a man left her here. Storm deepens. We take her to warmth if you agree. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of care. Reverend Samuels looked at me. Leadership fell strangely on his shoulders that morning, but he bore it with humility. If she's willing, he said, and if you'll raise her as your own. The leader inclined her head. Mary looked up at us both, her hand slipping into the woman's. The choice was hers, and she'd already made it. Something loosened in my chest. Relief or grief, I couldn't tell. They wrapped her in a thicker blanket than ours, patterned in russet and black, warm enough to chase the breath fog from her lips. As they prepared to ride, the leader paused at the cedar box. She lifted it carefully, testing its weight, then secured it behind her saddle. The iron latch glinted once in the pale sun. Mary didn't cry when they rode away. She held the blanket close and watched the mission disappear behind her like a place she'd only dreamed of. Snow fell harder, turning their departure into a soft blur. I stood long after they passed the ridge, broom in hand, not sweeping, just holding on to the handle as if it anchored me to the world. By noon, the storm sealed the tracks. Bitter willow folded back into its usual work. I hammered nails into warped boards on the mission's roof, my gloves stiff with cold, each strike sending small sparks of warmth through my wrists. Between blows, I kept glancing at the empty cot. A place remembers those who pass through it. The cot rope still seemed shaped to her small form. Reverend Samuels joined me with a bucket of nails. A child belongs where she's wanted, he said quietly. Sometimes that's not where she began. I thought of her father's trembling hands, the note, the cedar box. He didn't give her a chance. He gave her what he believed was survival, the Reverend replied. Belief can be brittle in winter. Years passed like seasons you only half noticed. I left Bitter Willow in spring, taking odd jobs along the stage line, fixing axle pins, mending saddles, hauling grain across thawing creeks. Stories drifted in from traders about an Apache girl riding fast horses, skilled with leatherwork, known for asking as a question. The rule lived on somewhere far beyond our mission walls. The cedar box returned to my thoughts every now and then, usually when I leaned over a cracked wagon wheel or knotted new rope. Not the box itself, but the way fear had filled it. I wondered sometimes if Mary, whatever name she used now, ever opened it again. The trail brought me back to Bitter Willow one summer when the poplars shimmered like brushed silver. The town looked smaller, edges softened by dust and time. At the mission, the Reverend's beard had gone white, and he moved slower, but his eyes held the same patient steadiness. You came back at the right time, he said, handing me a ladle of cool well water. Storm clouds gathering over our heads again. I followed his gaze south. Dust rose in a steady line, too deliberate for cattle, too few for soldiers, riders. 4 of them. My heartbeat thumped like a mallet on rawhide. The first rider's posture was familiar, the quiet ease of someone who belonged wherever she stood. Long black hair braided tight, a coat of dark hide, beadwork refined with years of skill. And behind her saddle, secured with a sturdy knot, rested a cedar box. The same one, older, the latch dulled but unbroken. She dismounted near the mission gate, boots raising small puffs of dust. The other riders stayed back, forming a respectful semicircle. She studied me with calm recognition, though I was older, broader in the shoulders, more weathered from trail work. You swept the floors, she said, Her voice carried the cadence of two worlds, but belonged wholly to neither. There was no accusation, just memory. "And you chose your path," I replied. She touched the cedar box lightly. "Some things need returning, some need naming." She looked past me to the mission. "I come for the truth of how I began." The Reverend stepped forward, hat in hand. "You'll have it," he said, "whatever is ours to give." We led her inside. She paused near the empty cot, the ropes newly replaced but still creaking with the echo of old winters. A single beam of light fell across the space, dust swirling in it like drifting seeds. She touched the wall beside the cot, fingertips tracing the grain. "I remember cold," she murmured, "and a hand." She didn't say whose. Outside, thunder rolled low across the plains, promising rain. I noticed then that she carried more than the cedar box. Slung by her saddle was a leather satchel stitched in careful patterns, her own work, likely. Her life, held in something she made with her hands. We sat at the long table where her father once placed the box. She unlatched it now with a slow exhale. Inside were the same items. The wool dress, small but preserved. The ribbon, frayed at the edges. The note. She lifted the note without unfolding it. "I have not read this," she said. "Not yet." Reverend Samuels nodded. "Truth doesn't rush." A rumble of thunder shook the shutters lightly. She turned to me. "Will you stand with me when I open it?" It wasn't a command. It was a question, offered plainly. "I will," I said. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. She opened the note, hands steady as a wheelwright, measuring spokes. I braced myself for the words I remembered, sharp as frost. But paper changes in the hands of the child it was written about, so does meaning. Her lips moved as she read. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, her eyes held neither anger nor easy forgiveness, just clarity. "He wasn't ready to be a father," she said, "but he gave what he could." Outside, the rain thickened, drumming the roof in a calm, steady rhythm, like sweeping, like hoofbeats, like something returning home. She folded the note, set it back in the box, and closed the latch. "I will stay until the storm passes," she said. "Then I will decide my next step." We nodded. Decisions made slowly tend to last longer. She stood, looking around the small room where her life had once been nearly abandoned. "I know the rule," she added quietly. "Ask as a question." Her smile was small, tired but real. Thunder's echo softened. Lanternlight flickered gently against the cedar box. And that was how the quiet disruption began, like a storm approaching, steady, certain, patient. Rain smudged the world to soft edges that afternoon, turning Bitter Willow's main street into packed clay the color of cooling coffee. I stayed near the mission's doorway, letting the storm sounds settle my breath while she, Mary, though she no longer used the name, paced the length of the table. The cedar box rested where she'd placed it, the latch dull from age and travel. Each time her fingers brushed the lid, she paused as if listening for something under the wood. She didn't ask for a room or fire or food. She set her satchel near the hearth and removed a small bundle of leather cords, worn smooth by years of use. With patient hands, she tied back her braid again, tightening it with quick, sure motions. I'd seen that same calm in Ferrier's fitting shoes, work done correctly the first time. No rush, no flourish. Rain trickled down her coat sleeves and pooled around her boots. "Storm won't last till nightfall," I said quietly. "It doesn't need to," she replied, voice steady. "Time sits heavy in this place." A faint smile tugged at the Reverend's mouth. "You remember more than you think." She looked at the cot again. "Memory grows like roots, deep where you don't expect." We spent that hour doing simple work, letting conversation rise only when needed. I repaired a loose shutter, tapping nails into wet wood while water dripped from the eaves. She moved to the wood pile and began checking each log with the back of her knuckles, judging its dryness. When she found the best pieces, she stacked them carefully beside the stove. Nothing flashy, just competence, quiet and sure. When the rain eased, a group gathered outside, townsfolk, drawn the way people drift toward anything unusual after too long without news. Edward Rowan, the storekeeper, stood with his arms folded. Behind him, Mrs. Harrow clutched a shawl as if modesty itself might leak out into the storm. They didn't knock. They simply looked in through the open doorway. "She's Apache," Mrs. Harrow whispered. "You can see it plain as day." The Reverend stepped forward, blocking part of their view. "She's also here with purpose." Edward frowned. Purpose is rarely gentle around these parts. "She came for the truth," I said, "not trouble." Mary watched them without flinching. Her gaze wasn't hard. It was simply level, weighing each person with the same patience she'd shown the woodpile. When she finally spoke, it was with a tone that quieted even the rain. "If you need answers, ask them as a question." The rule, spoken at our midpoint, steady as a fence post driven deep. I felt something settle in my chest, like a horse calming under a familiar hand. Edward cleared his throat. "What brings you here, exactly?" His voice struggled against old fear, but he shaped it into a question anyway. She stepped forward, boots leaving small wet circles on the floor. "I came to see the place where my life was set aside. I came because the choice was not mine, but the truth can be." Mrs. Harrow's eyes flicked to the cedar box. "He left you with nothing but that?" Mary touched the latch lightly. "No, he left me with a chance. It was small, and he feared it wasn't enough, but it was." There was no bitterness in her voice. That unsettled them more than any anger would have. Edward shifted his weight. "And now, what do you want from us?" "Only this," she said, "a clear telling, nothing more." The Reverend nodded. "We can give her that. The rest is between her and the road." Mrs. Harrow stepped back as if someone had pressed a hand to her spine. "Well, if she's just here for words—" "She is," I said, "and she'll leave us no worse than she found us." The townsfolk drifted away slowly, uncertainty trailing them like loose thread. Once the road was empty again, Mary let out a breath she'd held too long. She didn't sag. She simply grew still, like a deer deciding whether to run. "You handled that well," I told her. "It is easier to hold calm when anger has no use," she replied, "but calm is work." Rain softened to mist outside. Inside, the Reverend set a kettle on the stove and wiped his hands on a linen towel. "Storm's not done with us yet," he said quietly, "and neither is the day." He was right. Near dusk, a rider approached from the western ridge, alone, hunched slightly, moving with the tired gait of someone who'd ridden too long without rest. When the horse stopped near the mission gate, the man slid to the ground and nearly dropped the reins. He leaned on the fence post as if it owed him support. I recognized him only by the shape of his shoulders. Time had thinned him, weathered him. Carved worry lines where once there'd been stubborn pride, but the eyes, pale blue, too pale for comfort, were the same. Her father. He saw me first, then the Reverend, then finally her. The sight of her hit him like a gust of wind. He took a step back, gripping the fence until his knuckles turned white. "I heard," he rasped. "She came back." He swallowed. "I didn't expect this." Mary didn't move closer, didn't retreat. She stood exactly where she was, hands loose at her sides. "You left me in winter," she said. No accusation, no softness. A fact, spoken with the steadiness of someone measuring truth. He nodded, jaw trembling. "I did." The Reverend stepped away from the doorway, giving them space. I stayed where I was but lowered my eyes. Privacy, offered quietly. "I was young," her father said. "Poor. The land was failing. Your mother, she passed too soon." He brushed rain from his brow. "Fear is a louder thing than hunger." Mary listened, silent. "I thought I was giving you a chance," he said. The Reverend, the warmth, his gaze dropped to the cedar box. "I didn't know they'd find you first." "They did," she said. He let out a breath that shuddered. "Are you here to make me pay for that?" No, she replied. I came to understand. And did you? I understand that you believed you were alone, she said, but you were not. People here would have helped you. You did not ask. The rule returned again, shaped by her own experience. Ask as a question, a way of living, not just a lesson. He bowed his head. I didn't know how. Silence held all of us for a moment, thick as damp wool. Then Mary stepped forward, only one pace, enough that he had to lift his eyes to meet hers. What do you want now? She asked. He blinked. The question startled him, not for its sharpness, but its fairness. To know if you're all right. I am, she said. And if you can forgive me. She shook her head, not in refusal, but in careful honesty. Forgiveness is a long road. I can begin walking it, that is all. Her father swallowed hard. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, she said. But beginning is work, not reward. Thunder rolled again, distant but growing. The horse pawed at the wet earth. Her father leaned heavier on the fence, shoulders sagging with something long buried rising to the surface. Regret, maybe. Or simply the weight of being seen clearly for the first time in years. The Reverend approached slowly. There's room inside, he said gently. Shelter until the storm passes. Her father hesitated. I don't want to bring trouble. Trouble's already here, I said, but it's not yours to carry alone. Mary looked at me. Just a small glance, but it felt like acknowledgement. She turned back to him. Come in, we can speak, or sit in silence. Both have their uses. He followed her inside like a man walking toward a truth he'd avoided most of his life. We set chairs around the stove. The rain picked up again, tapping the roof in steady, muted rhythms. I ladled warm broth into tin cups, the steam curling up like a gentle offering. Her father held the cup in both hands, as if afraid it might slip through his fingers. She sat across from him, back straight, face calm. Nothing about her posture suggested the little girl once left in this room. She was her own person now, shaped by two worlds, claimed fully by neither. You grew strong, he said softly. I grew taut, she corrected. Strength is only part of it. He nodded slowly. Did they treat you well? Yes, she paused. Better than Winter would have. He winced, but he didn't look away. Outside, lightning spidered behind the clouds. The storm deepened, forcing us into a pocket of time where nothing moved except our breaths and the small sounds of broth being sipped. Mary finally spoke again. You came far to find me. I did, he said. Word reached me that a woman matching your description rode into Bitter Willow. I felt I had to see for myself. He set the cup down carefully, as if it might break. I thought you might hate me. Hate is a heavy load to haul, she said. Pointless unless you want it to shape you. And you didn't let it? No, she folded her hands. I was raised to carry tools, not resentment. A faint, tired smile crossed the Reverend's face. Her father shifted. Your mother, she would have wanted. Mary raised a hand gently. Speak of her only if it brings truth, not excuses. He nodded. Truth, then. She was sick. I was scared. I didn't know how to raise you alone. When she died, I fell apart. His eyes glistened. I thought the mission would save you. I was wrong. You tried, she said. Trying is not enough, but it is something. He wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. I want to make things right. Mary's expression softened slightly, like thawing earth. That is work, she said, and work takes time. He nodded again, more firmly this time. The kettle hissed softly. A log cracked in the stove. The storm began to shift. The thunder farther away now, rolling gently instead of striking hard. Mary stood. We should mend what we can before night, she said to me. Storm loosened the west shutter. I rose without hesitation. I'll bring the tools. Her father half rose, uncertain. Can I help? Mary considered him, not judged, considered. Then she nodded once. Yes, fetch the ladder from the shed. He blinked, surprised. but gratitude flickered across his tired features. All right. We stepped outside into the softened air, the storm easing into a mist that cooled our skin. The shutter hung crooked, bent nail poking like a splinter. I held the board steady while Mary measured the angle with her fingers, then signaled to her father. "Raise it," she said. He lifted the ladder, hands steadying more with each moment. When she climbed, he held the rungs firm, his breast shallow but determined. Small work, shared work, simple but binding. She tapped the bent nail out, replaced it with a new one, and hammered it cleanly. Rain touched her hair in tiny beads. I passed her another nail. She took it without looking, trusting the motion. When she climbed down, she brushed her hands off on her coat. "It's enough for tonight," she said. Her father looked at the shutter, then at her. "Thank you." She shook her head. "Thank the work. It steadies more than people do." The storm finally broke open to a wide, quiet sky. The last light of day caught the cedar box through the mission window, its latch gleaming once more, faint but steady. A small, earned calm settled over us. Night would bring decisions. But for now, the lantern of the moment burned steady and warm. Dawn came slow, brushing pale gold along the tops of the cottonwoods. The storm had rinsed the world clean, leaving the air smelling of wet earth and cold iron. I stepped out early to check the fence line behind the mission, boots sinking slightly into soft mud. Mary was already there, crouched beside a split rail, fingers pressed to the damp wood. She didn't look up when I approached. "Storm pushed it inward," she said. "If another gust hits before we brace it, the whole section will lean." I nodded, testing the rail myself. "We can fix it." Her father walked toward us from the shed, carrying a mallet and 2 stakes. The morning light softened the lines around his eyes. He paused a few feet away, waiting, not assuming, waiting to be invited. Mary's gaze didn't leave the broken rail. "Hold the far end," she said. 3 words. A task. A beginning. He obeyed gently, anchoring the wood with both hands. She fitted the stake into place, tapping it in with steady strokes until the grain swallowed the iron cleanly. I followed with the second stake, and together we reinforced the rail in quiet, coordinated rhythm. 3 people working as if they'd done it before, though nothing between us had ever fit so well. When we stepped back, the line stood firmer than before the storm. Her father let out a slow breath. "Good work," he said, voice hushed like the morning. Mary dusted her palms on her coat. "Work is honest when talk cannot be." He nodded, accepting the words as they were meant. Not praise, not dismissal, but balance. I checked the neighboring post, running my hand along a cool wood. A bird called from somewhere unseen, sharp and bright. Mary straightened, scanning the horizon as if listening for something older, deeper. When her eyes narrowed slightly, I followed her gaze. Apache riders approached. 3 this time, including a man with a feathered binding in his hair and a longbow slung across his back, not as a weapon, but as a tool of craft. A woman rode beside him with a calm seat, reins loose in her hand. Their horses moved like shadows of the rising sun. Mary stepped forward to meet them. She didn't rush. She didn't stiffen. Her posture changed only by a fraction, something between responsibility and relief. "You stay the night," the woman said, dismounting with fluid ease. "The storm asked it," Mary replied. The man's eyes flicked toward the mission, then toward her father and me. A brief silence stretched, measured, but not tense. "You found what you came for?" he asked. "Some of it," she said. "The rest is still being shaped." The riders exchanged slow nods. One offered her a folded cloth, woven with intricate patterns. Colors deepened from many seasons of sun. She accepted it, holding the fabric with both hands, thumb brushing over the familiar stitching. "It is time to return?" the man asked. Mary looked at her father. Not long, not searching, just long enough to read the quiet fear he tried to hide. "Not yet," she said. "There is still work here." The woman smiled faintly. "Work is a strong root." Mary touched her hand to her chest, then extended it to them, an echo of the greeting she'd once offered as a child. They returned the gesture, mounted their horses, and rode off with the confidence of people who trusted her choices fully. Her father exhaled shakily. "They respect you." "They raised me," she replied. "Respect grows where care is steady." He lowered his head. "I failed at that." Mary didn't contradict him. She simply turned back to the mission, boots sinking lightly in the softening mud. I followed her, sensing the shift in the day. Something approaching that wasn't quite conflict, but still demanded strength. Inside, Reverend Samuels had prepared a small breakfast of cornbread and warmed beans. Mary ate quietly, using a spoon worn smooth from years of service. Her father barely touched his share, eyes drifting constantly to the cedar box on the table. "What will you do with it?" he finally asked. She didn't answer immediately. She wiped the spoon clean with a cloth, placed it beside her cup, and folded her hands. "I carried this box because it was the first thing I was given," she said. "Not the last." He swallowed. "I want to understand what that means." "It means you were afraid," she said. "Fear shaped your choice, but I do not have to hold the shape it made." He nodded, though the words struck deep. Reverend Samuels cleared his throat softly. "If understanding is what you seek, both of you perhaps walk the edge of town together. The path is quiet at this hour." Mary rose. Her father followed slowly. Before stepping out, she paused beside me. "Walk with us?" she asked. "If you want me to." "I do," she said. We headed toward the southern fields, where winter wheat pushed tender shoots through dark soil. Clouds drifted low overhead, soft and gray. Mary walked with hands clasped behind her back, her stride confident, her shoulders relaxed. Her father kept pace beside her, though he looked at the ground more often than the horizon. "When I left you," he said finally, "I thought I was doing it for you. I see now I was doing it for myself." Mary nodded. "Truth begins when excuses end." He closed his eyes briefly. "Do you hate me?" "No," she said. "I looked for hate once. It is a shallow well. It runs dry too soon." A long breath left him. I want to know you, not only the child you were, the woman you became." She stopped walking. The breeze lifted the end of her braid slightly. "That is work," she said, "not desire." "I'm willing," he replied. She studied him, carefully, thoroughly, like someone assessing damage in a piece of wood to see if it can still bear weight. "Then we start small." He swallowed. "How small?" "Ask me a question," she said. He looked startled, then thoughtful. "Were you safe? Truly safe?" "I was loved," she said. "Not sheltered, loved." A tremor of relief crossed his features. He tried again. "Did you think of me?" "Sometimes," she answered. "Like remembering a cold wind. It shaped the morning, but it did not stay." He nodded slowly. "Thank you." Mary resumed walking. "We will go back now. The Reverend will need help mending the chapel step before evening prayers." Her father blinked at the shift in tone. "You want me to help?" "Yes," she said. "Not because you owe it. Because work steadies the mind when the heart is learning." I touched her arm lightly. "I'll gather tools." She nodded once. As we returned, the sun climbed higher, turning puddles along the road into small mirrors. The day felt warmer already. Still cool, still early, but warmer. The repair job was simple. A loose plank on the chapel stoop that rocked underfoot. Mary knelt beside it, pressing her palm to the wood. "Warped," she murmured, "but not ruined." Her father crouched beside her, accepting the pry bar I handed him. He lifted the plank gently, as if afraid it might flinch. Mary steadied it with 2 fingers. "Remove the splintered corner," she instructed. "Use the mallet, not force." He followed her direction carefully, tapping until the wood released cleanly. I trimmed the warped edge with a handsaw, the rhythmic rasping filling the warm air. Mary fitted the plank back into place and drove 2 new nails through it, her strikes crisp and precise. When we finished, the stoop no longer groaned under weight. Her father stepped back, a small, weary pride creeping into his posture. "Good work," he whispered. Mary met his eyes. "Yes," she said, "good." The moment stretched, gentle as a held breath. Inside the mission, the Reverend lit a lantern, letting it cast a steady glow across the table. "You 3 make a fine crew," he said. "Storm or no storm." Mary shook her head. "Just work." "And work is holy," the Reverend replied. Near midday, Mary moved to the cedar box again, resting her hand atop the lid. The room quieted around her. "I carried this far," she said softly. "But distance isn't meaning." Her father stepped closer, not intruding, just near enough to listen fully. She unlatched the box. The tiny click echoed for a long moment. She lifted the wool dress, held it up to the light, then folded it carefully. The ribbon followed, frayed but still soft. She placed both back inside, then picked up the note. Without unfolding it, she held it out to her father. His hand trembled as he accepted it. The note looked smaller now, less like a burden, more like a beginning shaped from old mistakes. "You may keep it," she said. "It belongs to the man who wrote it." He closed his fingers around the paper. "If you want it gone, I'll burn it." She shook her head. "No. Let it remind you of the day you began again." He pressed the note to his chest, breath fragile. Mary lifted the box next. She turned to me. "Will you open the stove?" I swung the iron door wide. Warmth spilled into the room, carrying the calming scent of split oak and smoke. She held the cedar box over the flames, not casting it in, not burning it, just warming the wood. Her father watched, confused. "You're not destroying it?" "No," she said. "I am changing what it carries." She set the box on the table. Slowly, she removed its contents, then placed into it the woven cloth the Apache riders had given her that morning. She folded it with reverence, letting the colors settle inside. The past and the present, housed together without conflict. She closed the lid gently. The latch clicked. "This," she said, "is my beginning now." Her father bowed his head, not in defeat, but in acceptance. Reverend Samuels wiped his eyes discreetly with the corner of his sleeve. "The world shifts when a heart does," he murmured. Mary turned toward the doorway. "We should check the drying lines. Storm winds may have snapped them." I nodded. "I'll walk with you." Her father hesitated. Mary regarded him thoughtfully, then extended an open hand. Not a gesture of closure, but of invitation. "Come," she said. "The lines are long. We need more than 2 hands." He took her hand just for a moment, then let go, respectfully, carefully. Outside, the midday sun broke through in scattered beams. The drying lines behind the mission had indeed sagged. One had snapped outright. We worked together, knotting the rope, pulling it taut, anchoring it against a stout post. Simple motions, repeated often enough to become a language of their own. At one point, while tying a loop, Mary paused and glanced toward the fields. "A stretch would help your shoulders," she said quietly, our single wellness cue tucked gently into the day. Her father obeyed, rolling his shoulders with a soft grunt. "Feels better," he admitted. We returned to the mission at dusk, tools cleaned, rope tight, repairs solid. The sky dimmed to soft amber. A lantern glowed through the window. Mary looked at her father, then at me. "Tomorrow," she said, "I will choose my road." He nodded. "I'll accept it. Whatever it is." Her voice softened. "It will not be away from truth." The wind carried the scent of rain left over from the storm. The cedar box gleamed faintly inside, the latch catching the last light of the evening. A small, steadfast promise. And with that quiet certainty, the day settled into earned calm. The next morning broke clear, a thin line of gold sliding over the prairie like a quiet blessing. Mary saddled her horse with unhurried care, the woven cloth folded neatly in the cedar box strapped behind her. Her father stood a few steps away, not reaching for her, not clinging, simply present, hat held to his chest as the breeze lifted the edges of his coat. She touched her forehead once in farewell, then turned toward the open stretch of earth that waited like a fresh page. She rode out steady and sure, braid brushing her back, dust rising soft beneath her horse's hooves. The sun caught the latch of the cedar box, flashing once like a small, honest truth. Some beginnings ride beside us longer than endings ever do, and that is enough.